Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the spooktacular October Debate Hub. And I am so excited to be here. I am your master debater. I'm Chesh, you know me. This is my channel, and I have a lovely guest with me. Hold on, I'm hearing myself. Just one second. There we go. I had it open in the background, and I forgot. Because of course I did. My apologies. I have our lovely JL Warren with us today, and please, who are you to anybody who's foolish enough to not know who you are?
Oh, who am I? Well, these deep philosophical concepts, or no, but I am JL, and thank you so much for having me, Chess. It's an absolute blast to be on your channel. What can I say? I have two channels. I have my personal channel, which is Bridge the Divide, and then of course I run a horror channel, which is Week in Horror, which is a podcast that where me and my filmmaker friends all deep dive the horror films that released that week in horror history. And so it's not really a review show. It's more like we deep dive because we all work in the industry. We're all like writers and actors and directors and stuff. And so we kind of like dive into the history and the culture and the influences and where the directors and the writers were at, what the influences were. So we do that every week. And that's over at the YouTube channel Week in Horror or wherever you listen to podcasts. So Google, Apple, Spotify, so on and so forth. But we're currently
in the
in our
description below.
Thank you so much. And we're currently in our fourth season on that. Over 600 films that we have talked about throughout the entire course of horror history, going back all the way back to 1896 and The House of the Devil, and all the way up to today. Everything. We love it all. Especially Eastern horror, Western horror doesn't really matter. But we cover it all, and we've expanded a little bit. We've gone into horror gaming a little bit with games like Phasmophobia, and I think the new the Quarry recently released, and that's being handled by our channel. That's on our channel that's being handled by Alien X Gaming over at our Week in Horror gaming channel. Those links are available at the over Week in Horror. But yeah, we love the genre. We love all things spooky, and we decided
now's the time of year for it.
Literally, come on. Every month of the year is pre-October. It's pre-Halloween.
Yes.
Every year of the month is just how many days till and that's why I love October. And I think you can agree with me on this. Mm-hmm. Something about October. Okay, forget November, forget December, and all the the stuff. All those there's holidays there. So what? There's commercialization. There's hanging with your family. Whatever. It's not just Halloween. It's October. There's something special about this month. And
it's a vibe.
It's a vibe, and we're not in it for ourselves. It's not we're just in it for the fun. This is the most fun month, and this is this is what it's all about.
Halloween has got to be one of the most pure, still pure holidays. It is not terribly over commercialized. It's not about other people or yourself, really. It's about just the culminative experience of being spooked or being scared. But if you're not interested in that kind of spookiness, there's also this element of we're just having a good time and wearing fun costumes and just a goofiness that comes with it. But with the temperature change and the tree color change, it all just matches this experience that takes up the whole month.
We're no longer burning hot. We're not ice cold anymore. It's right there in that transitional stage where things are cooling off, and it's just it's
Christmas pressure.
Right, and even in the Walmart nearby, Walmart near me, there's already Christmas stuff out, and it's not even Halloween yet, and they're already setting up the Christmas style. It's no, because Halloween, that's how you can tell it's not all that commercialized. Yeah, they sell candy, and that's what it's about. But what's that candy for? That candy's specifically intended to make people happy, or give you an excuse to gorge on it yourself and not give it out to anybody. Exactly. So it's strictly designed to make people happy, to enjoy the celebration. You literally buy it to give it away, and that's the beauty of this month. That's the beauty of it. And the whole point of it, I think is because going all the way back, if you want to go back to the ancestral origins of Halloween, if you want to go back to the festival of Samhain, or however you want to take it, there's something there in fear, or the unknown is something ubiquitous that all of us, it kind of tickles that deep part of you, of all human beings. Doesn't matter who you are. There's something about what's hiding in the shadows, the stories that we tell each other, when we're huddled around a campfire.
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing that has been common throughout humanity since we first started walking on two legs. And it's a beautiful thing because it's one of the last things that really unites us. And that everybody on this planet, I don't care who you are, loves some aspect of this genre.
There's something thrilling about it.
Right. Whether it's family horror or kooky horror or comedy horror or really deep psychological stuff, or hell, even going all the Herschel Gordon Lewis, the splatter stuff, it doesn't matter. Or if you like sitting around a table and gaming with your friends. Horror gaming is about storytelling. That's what it's about. It's literally doing the same thing. You're sitting around a table, playing a game, running your character, and determining what you choose to do, determining the course of events to get to a final conclusion. It's the same as storytelling. Only everybody gets to kind of like add their part. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a point. And that has to do with what's one of the most successful games that's a group game that has come out since 2020. Among Us. And what's Among Us? Oh. It's the thing, the game.
It's the thing. Which is wild because Among Us is so popular, but there actually is a thing board game called I think Outpost 31. Mm-hmm. And it's a brilliant game, and I will tell you this. I don't know if have you had a chance to play it?
No.
Okay, so back when I was in Texas with my friends, we had like a Friday night game night, and so we would play. I think it's like Outpost 31 is what. So we sit down. It's literally the thing. It's all it is, and you play the different characters from the film. So you're McCready or your Windows or your whoever. So you choose your guys, and they all have different little skills, and you try to survive through 3 phases of the game. That game is so. I don't want to curse. I don't want to
swear all you want. Fuck this place. Okay, I'm called Master Debater. You're fine.
That game is so fucking hard. It's one of the few we have yet to pass. And it was like, because you bring up Among Us, and that brought us to the thing. And another one I was thinking about, the minute you said really, really popular ones, I immediately went to Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Right.
And the expansion that came out for that, which is a brilliant expansion. But that one, telling this different story every single time and all the different outcomes and the way, and then the betrayer and stuff like this, that is brilliant stuff.
Yeah, there's always I think there was an old one called Secret Hitler. And so the point is you gotta figure out who in the game is the secret Hitler. So like one of your friends is a traitor.
I think there was a couple other two that kind of came to mind. Obviously, a lot of people out there and a lot of people who watch your channel are gonna be familiar with Arkham Horror. Yeah. A lot of stuff done with Call of Cthulhu. Those are classic. Film noir characters or characters out of the 20s and 30s, or depending upon the expansion that you're running. But because I know that Arkham Horror gets really big with all the expansions. But another two that came up was Fury of Dracula and Whitechapel. So because essentially both of those are kind of the same. It's the same mechanic, but 2 different stories. Whitechapel and Dracula is that it's either whichever one you're playing, you're chasing, you and your team are chasing Jack the Ripper or Dracula. And the game master is Dracula or Jack the Ripper. And their objective is to stay ahead of you on the map. Your objective as the players is to culminate clues, to search around, talk to people, and try to get on Jack's. And so in Whitechapel, you want to capture Jack before he can commit all 5 of his murders, because then the game ends.
Right.
And in Dracula, you want to get out before he turns. Before he reaches his ship, I think is what it is, because he's trying to get back from, or he's trying to get to his castle, is what it is, or something like that. And he can turn your party into vampires and do all kinds of stuff. It's really cool. But those kinds of mechanics where it's horror is the most open for people to be involved in and to have that kind of interactive storytelling speaks to all of us. So yeah, but so many good options out there.
One of my favorite things, and I've noticed that I do this, is when I'm DMing Dungeons and Dragons. I currently play 5th edition, but whenever I DM, I always tend to lean into horror one way or another, completely incidentally, because my brain just starts going, and I'm like, well, what if they're doing this? Well, what are the consequences of that? Oh my god, all the trees on the planet are evil. And suddenly everything gets really spooky really, really fast. I'm a big fan of the psychological horror. I like to mess with my players. And so I like to kind of subvert their expectations. And in doing so, it starts putting them on this back off foot of like this just uncomfortable space. And as soon as you're in that, as soon as you can see them when they start getting a little fidgety, you're just like, got them.
My good friend Cody, who was our DM back when I was living in Texas, same kind of mentality. Mm-hmm. He likes it because we all have our expectations. Everybody has an expectation when they're going into a particular system, and so they're going to be looking at it as like, well, we have an idea of what the world is and what things are kind of laid out. We have these preconceptions, and he always tries to subvert that, add something new, bring his own kind of flavor to it, and always put the characters into situations that they would never anticipate. And really get people thinking, because the more people think, the more creative they can become, the more they can become interactive, the more they can become purveyors of the kind of their own story.
They're invested. Yeah.
And they're invested, absolutely.
So, yes or no, is like a little girl the scariest thing in like the majority of scenarios? Like, as long as it's there.
Okay. So, yeah, I would say it's up there. Now, for me personally, I wouldn't say it's the screen, because for me the unfeeling. Okay, for me, evil that is a function of something else. So agential evil. See, agential evil is one thing, because that's just me. I'm scary and I'm the bad guy. But when it's evil as a function of the universe, like the Nothing, from Neverending Story, that's scary to me, because
it's an inevitability.
Exactly. That's it's not something you can overcome. That's something you have to contest with or try to, deal with. And that I like that kind of story. That's what's scary to me. But when you bring up like kids, and then you got to go to like the urban legend of like black-eyed children and shit, then so children are obviously, and plus it's innocence corrupted is the storytelling trope there, right? This essentially what has been like, because you're faced with, the loss, this is this corrupted child and stuff, and then thrown at you. Silent Hill pulled it off really, really well.
Oh yeah. One of my favorites is when you get your players or you get your audience, because in some ways, if you're DMing, the player is the audience, and in some ways, when you're watching a film, you want to get is the audience to start feeling like they're uncomfortable, the audience to start feeling like they're on edge. And so one of my favorite things is when my players get paranoid about everything. They don't, because it puts them in a position of inaction, right? They're just like, but if we do this, we don't know. And if we do this, we don't know. And if we do this, we don't know. We can't do anything. And now suddenly they're not making decisions, and the world is happening around them, and stuff's going on until something's going to break somewhere. And then
analysis paralysis.
Yeah, and then they start infighting. Because one person wants to do this and one person wants to do that, and they're all paranoid about different stuff that's going to go wrong, and it's just like...
Analysis paralysis. I have fallen prey. I and the groups I've been a part of have fallen prey to analysis paralysis many a times. Yes. I think when I ran a game, I ran. I never ran a lot of D&D myself as a DM. Oh, yeah. I ran Palladium Rifts. And I love the Palladium system, and I loved that all the different world books were essentially different kind of genres, and there were several that were horror themed, several that were sci-fi, and then magic and other stuff, and fantasy themed, and so some cyberpunk and stuff. But the horror themed ones always spoke to me the most, because it allowed you to generate situations in which, especially, and I have to say, as part of my storytelling, one thing that I love is the moral conundrum. Yes. Is when you really bring a moral quandary to your characters, which can elicit that analysis paralysis.
Yep.
And that was kind of the inspiration. I was inspired because I grew up watching shows like Friday the 13th, the series, and Outer Limits and Twilight Zone, where the reason those things were great was not because of the monsters or the weird stuff that you saw. It was the moral conundrums that were faced by our protagonists or our antagonists at times. And so you see them in these situations where, and then essentially, then the show then asks, what would you do in this particular situation? And so that's what generates that kind of thought. And from that springs more creativity. And so you like to see that. And when you see your players' gears start turning and and then the interaction, and it becomes alive. And
it's the consequences, because now they've, especially once you've made a moral decision, now those you don't know what those consequences are. I think The Witcher pulled that off really, really well.
Yes.
The Witcher had you were making decisions, and you're like, I don't know what the right choice is. Like, I kind of want to save these kids that were eaten by this tree, but then I let the spirit out of the tree and it killed that whole town down the road. Oh, shit.
That's so wild, and I'm still on the fence about it because Henry Cavill obviously portrayed Geralt very, very well. And
right. Yeah, he did.
And anybody who doesn't have a crush on Geralt is just because he's the perfect blend of Legolas and Aragorn.
He is. He really is.
But he portrayed that character so well. And I'm so torn about having a man so incredible and amazing and beautiful and talented, be as big a nerd as I am in that respect, because you hear things like, he dove at playing The Witcher because he loves the books, and so he goes to the real nerd stuff. He's like, oh, I'm all in it. And he was informing the director. It's like, no, he wouldn't do this because of this and this deal. And it was like, okay, nerd. And then he's like, oh yeah, and I almost missed the callback for Man of Steel because I was busy raiding in WoW. And I'm like,
raiding in WoW.
So it's like, come on. It's like, come on, dude. But it's awesome that that's one thing I think is really, really cool is it's individuals like him.
Yes.
And many in a growing generation of directors, actors, and writers, and game developers and musicians that are beginning to see, or we're beginning to see a kind of growth in this kind of storytelling and in the genre itself. I would attribute it to directors. Yeah, I would attribute it to directors like Robert Eggers, to Fede Alvarez, and other individuals who have kind of generated this what they call essentially smart horror or intelligent horror. And I don't really like that phrase, but that's what the media is kind of calling it. It's like where it's essentially art house, but it's big budget art house stuff where it asks really difficult questions, and it allows us to really partake in these big things. And gaming is so important that because it invokes that, and we have people that are now bridging the kind of the gap between these two, and we're seeing that in our media today.
I mean, so part of that I would even add on and say part of that has to do with the YouTube sphere. Some of the biggest, most popular YouTube channels are Markiplier and Jacksepticeye, and their whole shtick was, we're playing this horror game. And then Five Nights at Freddy's came out, and it exploded. This Chuck E. Cheese ass knockoff.
and now you which obviously we wouldn't have Willy's Wonderland, the Nicolas Cage film, without, and we wouldn't have the Banana Splits movie, which whoever came up with that was a genius. And we're getting a Five Nights at Freddy film next year, so because it just entered pre-production this year, so we're actually getting an actual adaptation next year.
It got books. It started spawning theories, and as soon as game theory got as popular as it did, because gaming theory's been around for a long time, it just started allowing horror to expand so much in the online space. Because now all of a sudden there's a whole meta game going on where you're like, well, what's happening here? Because horror thrives off that mystery, right?
I think, and to piggyback on what you said about YouTube and about the online communities, that creepypastas and SCP also added into that a lot, because that allowed people to come together into kind of like a communal space and kind of add their own kind of thing to this world building. It was actually, this is really interesting, is that we bring up the kind of the communal storytelling, and anybody who knows me well enough knows that I'm a giant H.P. Lovecraft fan. So I just showed this to Chesh earlier, but I just added that to my collection, and I love my King in Yellow. So,
sorry, I didn't know that. Gage just informed me. I had no idea. The Jim Henson studio is making the FNAF models for the movie.
Nice.
Sorry, please continue. I just thought that was amazing.
Brilliant.
Piece of information.
That's amazing.
It just blew my mind.
Thank you.
Now I'm really looking forward to it. Before I was like, yeah, whatever. Now I'm like, oh shit.
So if the company that brought us the Fireys, which actually gave me nightmares when I was a child, with these creatures pulling themselves apart, is doing Five Nights at Freddy's in today's level of technology, absolutely. So, but if you look at this kind of communal storytelling, it's kind of like, as an author, H.P. Lovecraft was, when he was alive, was not that popular, and he died penniless. He died penniless for Toulouse, and it's kind of sad. But what H.P. Lovecraft did was he recognized how important the genre was to everybody, to both writers and to readers, to basically the community at large, to humanity. And so he left his works completely open to anybody. So anybody that wanted to add to the mythos, anybody that wanted to touch on his stuff or adapt his stuff the whole reason is because, Richard Chambers is the one who wrote The King in Yellow. And this book wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this guy literally thinking that his work had no value.
Right.
That's why he said that my worry, he was like, I'm not a very good writer and it's just crap. So I'm going to let anybody just do whatever they want with it. And there the guy is, and I love his works,
Yeah.
He's not the greatest author in the world, but I love the worlds that he created. And I love that everybody can add on to them, which kind of inspired me to write my own cosmic horror novella and do that. So, because everybody can play in that field because of that ubiquitous nature of it throughout all of us. And we all get it at some point.
You'll notice that you'll find horror is incredibly pervasive, that you could almost find horror elements in any type of story or any story you've ever watched. Any kind of movie that you've watched, take elements from what is the core of what makes horror. They just don't necessarily sort of expound on that suspense. They don't focus on that aspect. Most rom-coms are actually horrors if you were to play them in real life.
I could agree. I would absolutely agree. Somebody put something up there, said best Halloween horror film, Hocus Pocus, changed my mind. And okay, so I'm sorry on this. Let me take a stab at this because I don't know how pressed you are for time or in that respect, but I gotta take a stab at this.
Take your time. Yeah.
As someone who runs a horror film podcast, okay, and I got to dive into this. So no. Hocus Pocus is not the best Halloween horror film. Horror, in and of itself, subverts subgenres. And Hocus Pocus is a subgenre. The subgenre is family horror.
Yeah, there's not really any subversion in that movie.
There was some dark stuff in there, like the witches getting hung and like that. But it was done in a goofy manner. Nothing, grotesque was seen, and the witches come back. So essentially, it's family. It's family, but it's horror. So it's kind of a comedy horror with a family slant to it. The reason why it's not the best Halloween horror film is because, one, Halloween is not the central focus of the actual film. So you can't really say it's centered around Halloween, but the focus of the story is on the witches, is on the Sanderson sisters and their experiences. And they just happen to coincide with Halloween. Okay, so the best Halloween horror film is actually the Mike Daughtry film Trick or Treat. And the reason for it is, one, it is holiday centric, so it is centered around Halloween and the rituals and the history that are associated with Halloween. Two, it's an anthology, so you have multiple stories with a framing narrative where each one of them are interconnected in very unique ways by a supernatural force that is not pervasive throughout the entire film, but has effects on things and is generally easily explained in the aftermath by normal people, where you say, oh, a tragic accident, when in actuality it was something supernatural, which is kind of the way it could be, so it's not so easily dismissed. And it tells a provocative story and harkens back to the ancient history that we have with this holiday and why it is so important to us and why we do the things we do. Not to mention, powerful, excellent acting across the board, classic horror tropes. It wasn't overwrought or oversold. Well shot, extremely well done and well formulated. Good actors and an overall fun time. And it's good. And it's good for multiple watches every single year. It's literally required viewing on Halloween at my house because we sit down and watch Trick or Treat. That's what it was about. So Trick or Treat by Michael Daughtry is the greatest Halloween horror film ever because it is also straight horror.
This is how I feel about the Muppets Family Christmas because I think that's the perfect Christmas movie.
Muppets Family Christmas.
Muppets Family Christmas. It's got everything. It's got people coming together that are family members. It's got controversy, it's got interfighting. It's got one really grumpy guy who just turns over at the end. It's got people coming from different walks of life because the Fraggles show up. It's got the gift.
That's right.
Yeah, it's got the gift of giving. It's got the turkey bird. It's got the Swedish chef trying to eat Big Bird. It's got one person who's stuck in a snowstorm trying to make it home for Christmas. It's got everything.
Oh wow, that may be because because I was sitting there thinking of movies. Obviously, you think about stuff like the Jimmy Stewart Wonderful Life. You think about the movies like Wonderful Life or Christmas Carol, Dickens' Christmas Carol. The one with Sir Patrick Stewart was awesome. Yeah. Or the other one, not Stewart. I can't remember his name. It was I'll remember here in a second. So, but then you think about I think like Scrooged with Bill Murray was
Scrooged is good. Yep,
was absolutely hilarious.
Fantastic.
So, but yeah, I think I'm gonna think on that.
Yeah.
I initially would go, because then I think of movies like Die Hard and Home Alone, and you may be right. Muppet Christmas, maybe the perfect Christmas film.
I'm telling you, it has got everything in it. It's got conflict, it's got family values, it's got people from outside, it's got somebody stuck in a snowstorm, it's got Jim Henson in it coming in with a lesson at the end of the day. Like, it's got everything that you could possibly want in a Christmas movie. It's not the only Christmas movie, that's for sure. There's like Die Hard's fantastic.
I was gonna say Die Hard.
Die Hard's amazing. Nightmare Before Christmas is great, although I'm still not sure which one that classifies as. I think the moral is more of a Christmas moral than a Halloween one, so I would probably put it in the Christmas category. But I mean, there's so much, The Grinch. The Grinch is great. Charlie Brown. Love Charlie Brown Christmas. But there's so much horror in Christmas, though, now. There's so much horror that takes place on Christmas.
Right. Here's a question for you. Let me ask this to you, because I asked this of some people, and I never got, because you love horror as much as I do. And by the way, I didn't see who actually put up that comment about Hocus Pocus being the perfect horror.
It was Feline, and they're saying, I wasn't serious. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Wow. I just say I'm nerd. I took it too far. I took it too far.
I'm here for it. If I was worried about it, I would have stopped you.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this one.
Yes.
Nightmare Before Christmas. Mm-hmm. Is that a story about recognizing your strengths or knowing your place?
Ooh. Oh, suddenly this got philosophical. I think it's a story about accepting who you are and learning how to integrate who you are with the world around you and expanding that bubble. So he is not happy and satisfied no matter how great he is. He gets bored, right? That's Jack's shtick. Mm-hmm. And then he finds out the world is bigger. He becomes a small fish in a big pond, but he hasn't realized he's a small fish yet. So he thinks he can just do the job that Santa can do. And he's like, cool, I'm just going to do this. So it's just like an arrogance, just getting the crap kicked out of it at the end of the day.
So is that knowing your place? Like recognizing your place, staying in your lane? So it suddenly occurred to me, I was like, wow, because both themes are in the film. Because Jack fails to recognize his strengths. This is where you're good. And you've gotten complacent. So that means you need to challenge yourself in the ways that you're strong. So recognizing what your strengths are, but also staying in your lane. Because while you're good at one thing, it does not guarantee that you're good at something else. So I was like, wow, two fundamentally different ideologies here about what they're
coming to the same conclusion.
Right. And it's kind of like boiling up together, and I was like, huh. And I actually asked that. The reason I asked you that is because I asked that online.
Yeah,
I posed that to the ether. I posed that to the ether, and I had people get so mad at me. They're like, "It's a feel-good movie. It's about love and coming together and recognizing the gifts that you have."
Jack has a dream and gets bitch slapped all the way back down into the grave.
And then he recognizes that, he's really good at Halloween and that Sally loves him and everything is great. And he realizes the true gift was friendship all along. It was like, oh, come on, dude. The guy stepped out of his lane.
Yeah. He kind of pulls this thing where he just sort of assumes that he's so great at everything that he'll just automatically succeed. And he fails spectacularly. He gets blown out of the sky by missiles.
Look, searchlights.
Hello, people. You're welcome. He's basically a narcissist learning his place and becoming not a narcissist anymore without the actual absurd amount of work that it takes to become a narcissist. He's Tony Stark without the 3, 4, 5 movies worth of work.
This is true. They're the very front. I don't think it is necessary knowing one's place to be staying in one's lane.
I think that's a semantic thing. So like,
I think so. Yeah.
Staying in your lane is generally viewed as a negative having a negative connotation, but that's not it. What Jack learns was a positive message. It was like, you have everything. Don't be greedy for another holiday. So okay, I have to
go ahead.
I have to bring us back. Do you have a favorite SCP?
Oh.
My favorite is Cain. The Cain and Abel one. I love that SCP. He's like, I can never die, and if I ever meet that SCP, I'ma kill it.
Okay, so I'm going to throw it out there. I'm familiar with SCP. I'm familiar with its existence, but I don't know it as well as I know specific creepypastas.
Oh, okay,
so
fine.
So
favorite creepypasta. We'll just shift the question.
Okay, so my favorite creepypasta of all of them is always going to harken back to Slenderman. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the creepypasta that is like, the king of the creepypastas is where it kind of all started. But the reason I liked it so much is because it follows two kind of things that are really close to my heart. One, it's very Lovecraftian in its essence. And I like the idea that that's the same kind of Lovecraftian storytelling, where it's this cosmic entity or this interdimensional entity that kind of interacts with us, but we are completely at its mercy and stuff like that. And it's along the lines of Cthulhu and Hastur the King in Yellow and other creatures. Yeah. But I also dug the idea that it's like a tulpa. And that, in sense, for those who are not familiar with what a tulpa is essentially a thought form, and it's this kind of like, I think it's a Buddhist idea, this idea that you can meditate, and with thought and enough concentration, you can bring something into existence just by willing it into existence. Yep. And that's essentially what a tulpa is. It's something that's brought to life through sheer will and belief. You believe it so strongly it manifests.
You would not believe how strongly that has taken hold of portions of the furry community.
So on the way to this door, we found this door over here in 4chan. So we're going to peek into this door at 4chan. And that's why I like it. So while there's other creepypastas, there's stuff like Smiling Jack, and then there's Siren Head, which I find goofy but endearing. But I think it all comes down to Slenderman and the idea that this thing is become so prolific. It now has video games, it now has movies, and it's got its own. You would think if someone came along and started just like hunting the internet, had no concept of what these things were, they may come across this legend and think that it was something that was real, that was out there.
Yeah,
it's just another urban legend, like
Bigfoot.
Right, like Goatman or the Jersey Devil or Mothman or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I found that to be really, really intriguing, that something can just generate that quickly off of a simple post. Someone put a post out there and people ran with it because it kind of touched something at a primordial level. And that's just the beautiful. What is that? Okay, I know Aaron. Aaron is one of the hosts of Week in Horror.
Oh, yes.
Slenderman is going to be the thing that shatters mine and Jail's friendship.
Here's where the drama started, everyone. You saw it here first. Rodent, no last name, asked, question for both of us. Do you prefer physical horror or psychological horror?
Me personally, psychological horror.
Same. I'm a fan of like the thriller aspect of things more than there's creepy people with masks outside my house. That got too real.
I like humans themselves. Humans are very physically adaptable. We adapt readily to a specific environmental stressors.
Yeah.
But psychologically, we don't adapt very well, especially the older we get. The older we get, the more those neural pathways kind of become stuck in place. And teaching an old dog new tricks. There's a reason that's a cliche. There's a reason that's an adage. Is because Old dogs really don't learn new tricks. They're set in their ways. That's the point. That's how neurophysiology works. Psychologically, we're not as adaptable as we would like to be. And that's why when you see things, when you see like kids in horror, displayed in horror, or you see teenagers in horror, adults, or even old people in horror, you see the way it affects them differently when they're written correctly. You see the way that some people just can't deal, or some people,
Bird Box, I think, displayed that really well.
Right. Yes. That inability to psychologically adapt to a situation, to adapt on the fly, that things, if you just can't deal, then you just collapse. And that is what is terrifying. There's a terrifying concept, because to be faced with something so afraid, so fear or so terrifying to you, or that touches on something you're so deeply terrified of, that to be faced with that, even in reality or whatever, and you cannot reconcile it, that dissonance blows back on you like a shotgun, and it's just like, and your brain just doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
That's when you're losing control of your mind. That is terrifying.
I think most people also kind of, given our like medical advancements just in general, so if any of this physical horror takes place in a time period, let's say, that doesn't that you're not in, like it's not modern. Whereas modern, you're going to disassociate with that a little bit, because you're like, whatever, I can just go to the doctor, right? Whereas, like, at the end of the day, if you get your arm cut off or chopped off, or you lose a couple fingers, or even you lose the bottom half of your body, that is not necessarily the end of your life. Right. Whereas if you take so much physical damage, then you're dead, and you're like, oh, well, I'm dead now.
That's the end.
Whereas physical horror just does not go away, no matter how long you live. If you've had a traumatic experience in your life, which I believe most of us have probably gone through now, to what degree is debatable, and it's not a contest, but that doesn't go away. Even if you get over it, and even if you get coping mechanisms for it, you have to live with whatever happened for the rest of your life, and it's never going to kill you. It's just something that you just have to deal with forever.
I think that's where, I get my love for Lovecraft, for Poe, for King, for Kuntz, for Chambers. That a lot of what these authors touched on is that trauma is a thing that it's a thing that you're saddled with by experience, through experience, and it's not a thing that you can ever really drop. You're always aware of it, because when you encounter trauma, you're fundamentally changed.
And it's not something that you chose. It's something that's forced upon you.
That's thrust upon you.
Yeah, there is no agency in that. Whereas, like, with physical, like, say, for instance, Saw. The Saw movies, it's like, it's not the physical horror that's horrifying about it. It's that you have to make the choice to saw your own foot off, and you have to do it yourself. Yeah, it's horrible and gory and it's a mess, but that's not what gives the people problems in the movie. The thing that gives people problems is they're like, oh, I have to do it.
Right. It's that's what gets me. I think that's what draws me to that level of horror, is because, every single one of us at a time in our lives has experienced some level of trauma, whether it be minute, or I know it's different for every single person, and it lingers. But the one thing that's common between it all is it lingers. It's always there. It's always a new thing that's in your Rob Liefeld pack that you're going to be carrying around, and you may get used to it. You may sometimes not even notice that it's there, but it will always be there. And at times you'll suddenly realize that it was there, and then you'll have to deal with it. And so that's the thing that's the thing that really captures me. I think what everybody gets about the genre, why the genre will always be important, is because the things that causes trauma. Now, in this world, the things that causes trauma, the horror genre, no matter what version it takes, whether it's film or it's literature or it's gaming, however it is, all of these, every medium, the medium doesn't matter, but the genre in itself allows us to deal with the traumas that we face on a daily basis, the traumas that we're saddled with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
The things that we can't articulate emotionally, the things that we suffer dissonance from. In the hyperbolic state, in the hyperbolic world of horror, we're able to reconcile those feelings. We're able to see them played out in a scenario, and it allows us to kind of digest and get through those kind of initial steps, so that we can begin to compartmentalize, we can begin to internalize and begin to understand, and then eventually begin to heal.
Media,
so we need that.
Yes.
We need that expression. Absolutely.
Media being able to express trauma, being able to find comedy and tragedy, being able to express gratitude and love or whatever through whatever medium it may be, whether it be a comic book, whether it be a regular, like a novel, whether it be a children's story, because some of those are real sad. Like you start to learn how to, as a child, you start to learn how to process grief because you're reading a book that's a little bit sad. And like, did you get hurt? Was this your friend? No, but you're processing and you're understanding and you're learning that these are things that you might go through in life. But I do think that's a bit of a detriment to physical horror. When it comes to physical horror, half the time, maybe this is just a me thing. Maybe you can let me know if I'm wrong, but whenever I'm watching a physical horror movie, I'm like, why would you make that decision literally ever?
Okay, so let me get a clarification. So when you're talking about physical horror, we're talking about body horror, things that are happening to your physical body. Right. So there's two kind of brands of that. That's something that's occurring to you because you have allowed it to happen, a la The Fly.
Yep.
Or there's something that's happening to you and you have no control over it, a la Evil Dead.
I'm thinking like slashers, like somebody's attacking you. And so, there's the physical horror of you're being physically assaulted or attacked or stalked, right? So I'm throwing that one in there as well. But maybe there's a more psychological point to that than the difference. You're being stalked and it's spooky.
It's like the differentiation in Halloween 3, because the Halloween films are ostensibly knife films, whereas Halloween 3 was more of a pod film, and so it's more the psychological aspect of it. It took inspiration from Invasion of the Body Snatchers and the Puppet Masters, whereas typical Halloween films are all Michael Myers stabby, and so that slasher genre both speak to us different ways. They're both kind of a physical horror. One is an external thing coming at you to attack you and kill you, and so you have to internalize why is it me? Why am I being targeted? Why is this bad thing happening to me? And then, of course, why am I being judged in some way? And what does it say about me if I survive or am able to overcome? That's how we get our final girls. The final girls are always the virtuous ones who make it through. The parallel, that's our...
As long as you have your pumpkin spice and your Uggs, you'll be fine.
Yeah, that puritanical storytelling really has got, it's made its way into the modern age. And then, of course, you have your pod one, your kind of pod horror, where it's the physical threat comes from that which is not evident in front of you. So there is a pervasive, growing threat that is out there that is going to kill you and is coming for you, but it's not a guy with a knife. It's either a grand cabal, or it's a corporation, or it's like a giant whatever. It's a conspiracy that's against you, and the growing threat of that coming in.
Even zombies are an unstoppable force, and they are going to get you. It's just a matter of how long will you be able to survive.
They're coming to get you, Barbara. Look, there they are, Barbara.
I just want to shout out Messenger Reveals did drop me a super chat for 50 that said, enjoy, good to see you. Thank you so much, man. I haven't seen you in forever, so hey, man, I hope you're doing good. Hit me up. Hit me up. Mm-hmm. So there's just so many aspects to horror that may be physical and psychological because they cross over so much, because a physical trauma can cause a psychological issue. Right? So now you're dealing with, they cross over too much, or at least they're too broad. We'd have to go, maybe slasher films versus survival horror versus gore, body gore.
This is interesting that you bring this up, because, it's so cool that you touch on this right now. So here we are in the eve of Halloween Kills. Okay, Halloween Kills comes out tomorrow. I'm so looking forward to it. My co-host, Johnny O from The Plot Hole, is not looking forward to it. Fuck him. I love the franchise. But it's interesting that you touch on this and how important it is, because it is a vital aspect of the horror genre.
Yep.
Rob Zombie tried to do this between his version of Halloween and Halloween 2. In Halloween, he essentially was given the go ahead by John Carpenter to remake the movie, but make it your own. Which is why we got the Rob Zombie take on it. We got the kind of rockabilly, underground kind of seediness. We got that aspect that's essentially all the influences of Rob Zombie that made Rob Zombie who he is, that made White Zombie what it is, all their musical influences, all played into that. So it's a little touch of Devil's Rejects, a little touch of House of a Thousand, and then we get Halloween. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought it was good. It was a good take on it. He paid homage and he made it his own. What do you do? It was serviceable. And even Sherry Moon. I'm not going to slight Sherry Moon for being.
If you didn't like it, it was at least respectable in what it was trying to do.
Right. She conveyed it appropriately. We're good to go. Now, but what he tried to do with Halloween 2, a lot of people hated Halloween 2, and I get why they hated Halloween 2. But he was trying to do what you just talked about right now. In Halloween 2, Rob Zombie was it was kind of a meta-analysis on violence, is what Halloween 2 was. Instead of just continuing the slasher trope and Laurie's constant struggle against Michael Myers.
Right.
The whole point of Halloween 2 was to make the audience sit back and take a good hard look at the pervasive and the infectious nature of violence. And that violence leads to trauma. And then that trauma can often lead to more violence in order to overcome or compensate for that trauma. Because that trauma makes us feel weak. And then that weakness, we lash out. And in that lashing out, we end up hurting other people.
As well as fear all mixed into
exactly.
all of those
the pervasive fear puts us in a defensive state all the time. Mm. He was trying to show in Halloween 2, despite all the weird, the white horse, that was the rage. The white horse was the symbol for rage, and the rage is what is in result of the fear that you're constantly in because of the trauma that you resulted from the first film. Yeah. And not only the physical scars that we bear, but the psychological scars. And so everything was symbolic. Everything was a metaphor. There was a lot of artsy stuff in it. The whole, seeing the mom and the horse and seeing himself as a child, all that weird stuff was all designed to show, and the stuff that goes on with Annie and with Laurie and with Annie's dad and the people of Haddonfield and what happened to Dr. Loomis is that this is what violence does in our society. He was examining how violence inflicted by one person infects everyone it touches, and then it then further goes out to infect others in different ways, sometimes violent, sometimes psychological, sometimes it makes us turn inward and we become selfish and callous and cynical like Dr. Loomis did. Sometimes we become self-destructive, like Laurie did. So sometimes we become overbearing, like Annie did. Everybody's affected differently, and it makes everybody's worlds worse. That's what he was trying to do, and unfortunately, it was either ahead of its time or he didn't pull it off. Whatever you want to decide, but he literally was trying to tell that. It
might have also not helped that it was under the Halloween title.
It may have been. This may have been a story that needed to be told somewhere else. And I applaud him for trying, because he was touching on what you were bringing up right there.
The thing that boggles my mind about this is that Halloween 2 was doing the same thing and telling the same kind of message and story in how one person going through this thing affects all these people around them as Disney's Encanto.
Shit, yes.
Same thing. Bad thing happened to grandma, how that has affected kids, and then how the whole family and the entire town. And how that leads to different traits when gone too far become harmful. Toxic perfectionism, toxic workaholic, toxic no, I said perfectionism twice. Just this toxic idea of that I don't fit in, and so I must remove myself because my presence is harmful. So isolation, right? All these things it covered, and it's Halloween 2 is telling the same idea, same concept as Disney's Encanto, and I just want a Halloween musical. or a Disney's Encanto horror where the Dolores goes on a killing spree because she just wants everybody to shut up.
See, that's the beauty of it, and how everybody in the there you go. Road in Los Angeles, Psycho 3 also examines how trauma affects larger groups.
Yep.
These stories get told time and time and time again. And if you could trace them all the way back, you trace them all the way back to the old Germanic fairy tales.
Oh,
these
yeah.
anecdotes about life and these kind of like cautionary tales about what we deal with. And of course, the after effects and thinking before you act and recognizing the consequences of your action.
But making sure that you don't get stuck in action paralysis.
Exactly.
You need to do something, because if you do nothing, then things happen without your input.
And, we see the same, and I love
Make sure you vote, everybody. Election's coming up.
It's funny, actually, speaking of voting, and this is the perfect time for me to be a totally shameless shiller.
Yes.
So,
chill. Go away.
Anybody, Aaron Reese in Canto 2, The Reckoning. I fucking love it.
In Canto 3, Dolores' Silence.
Okay, so there's a contest that's currently going on that many of you who are horror fans or horror fanatics may be aware of. It's called the Face of Horror, and it's put on by this group, Face of Horror, Rue Morgue, and the Beat Plus Foundation, or the Beat Positive Foundation, which is the Andrew McDonough Foundation. And so they've kind of all joined forces together to do this contest called, the Face of Horror. The winner of it gets a bunch of really cool prizes. Number one, the grand prize winner gets to hang out, gets to stay for 2 days in the Silence of the Lambs house, the Buffalo Bill house in Philadelphia, and do a photo shoot with Kane Hodder, which is really fucking cool, and walk on roll in independent film and a bunch of cash. So I am currently in this contest. I am currently first in my group, and you can vote for me. So if you have, and I don't have I will do this, and I'll just paste that to you.
Hell yeah, got it. It's
cool. And so you can pop over that, and you can vote for me once per day. You get one free vote every 24 hours. So you can vote, 24 hours later, vote again. Now, if you want to, you can vote more. You can get more votes, but it requires a donation to the B Plus Foundation. It's all explained on the website. It's not required. You do not have to. There is no money required being spent in this. It is all free unless you want to. So you can donate to the B Plus Foundation if you like, but otherwise, one vote per day, you can help me become the new face of horror, which I hope I have earned that at this point.
I don't know, after going off about Hocus Pocus, I'd say yeah.
I would say I have love for Hocus Pocus. I really do, and I like Hocus Pocus.
You didn't say it was bad. You just said it was a family film.
It's just not the best. Disney presents Hellraiser on Ice. So I legit, I think it's a good movie.
Jack Frost.
You can do some cool stuff with the skates and the chains and everything.
It is absolutely Jack Frost from the Michael Keaton movie, though. It's not Jack Frost from the Guardians movie. It's got to be like Creepy Snowman Michael Keaton, because that thing was terrifying.
Okay, because you got Creepy Snowman, because you got Jack Frost and Michael Keaton, then you got the Jack Frost horror films,
yes,
which was like the serial killer mutated into a snowman.
Yes. But played by Michael Keaton.
That would have been brilliant.
Who's actually a musician. Plays the harmonica.
Okay. So here's something cool. So, because I love that I love that you love horror as much as I do. And it was something I recently learned, something new about you I recently learned. I think this is absolutely cool shit. I'm in trouble. So I'm actually gonna run something by you.
Yes.
And we're gonna get the live chat. We're gonna get the live chat involved in this, because I'm just gonna run you some quick questions real quick. Just for fun. Just for fun. All right. And we'll see if the live chat
quizzed agrees. On my own show. What the hell?
No, you're not gonna get quizzed. I'm gonna ask your opinions. And you're totally entitled to your opinions. You can. The question is, are your opinions justified? So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go to the Week in Horror podcast. I'm gonna actually go to my show, because we do something really fun on our podcast once a month called the Bloodbath Debate, where it's the ultimate in horror nerddom, where we take horror icons and we debate who would win in a battle to the death.
Okay.
And who would win, we determine who would. So I'm just gonna run down. And we do it once a month. So I'm just gonna ask you real quick questions. You don't have to elaborate as to why unless you want to, but we're going to run down it. So, number one, Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees? Who would win?
Jason.
Jason would win? Okay.
I think Jason would win.
Number 2. Okay. Freddy Krueger or the Djinn?
Freddy.
Okay. Dexter or Hannibal? Dexter versus Hannibal.
Hannibal.
Okay. Chucky versus the Leprechaun?
Probably the Leprechaun. We're talking about like who would win in a fight?
Right.
The Leprechaun would win a fight.
Leprechaun? Okay.
Leprechaun would kick Chucky's ass. That's not even that wouldn't even be close. Chucky's like, I'm a killer who found one magic voodoo spell that turned myself into a doll. The Leprechaun is, I am a literal magical being and I'm going to eat your face.
Well, actually, because Chucky has learned to control that voodoo power enough that he can partition himself out into multiple dolls. He can partition his soul out into multiple dolls and create his own little army.
So he's now a Horcrux?
All right. The Thing versus the Blob.
Oh, I think that might be dependent. So I think the Thing is ultimately more powerful, but if it was early enough on, I think the Blob would win. Okay. So I think the duration of the fight would matter. The longer the fight goes, the more likely the Thing is to win. But earlier on, I think the Blob wins.
Okay. Christine versus the Car.
Christine.
Christine's
okay. Christine's got like 2 brain cells. She'll be fine.
Okay. Jigsaw versus the Collector.
The Collector, I think.
The Collector?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm waiting to see what the live chat is going to say, who their picks would be in these wins as well. The Creeper versus Pumpkinhead.
I don't know enough about either of them, sadly.
From Jeepers Creepers or the Pumpkinhead franchise?
Yeah, I don't know Pumpkinhead very well. I would probably say Jeepers Creepers because that scared the shit out of me more than Pumpkinhead did, but I don't know Pumpkinhead very well.
Okay, it's okay. All right, coming up the end, Salem's Lot, the Salem's Lot vampires, versus the Howling Werewolves.
Probably the vampires, just because of like that specific variety.
Okay. Ash versus Leatherface, Battle of the Chainsaw Aficionados.
Ooh. See, in my heart, I want to say Ash just because I love him and I would want him to win. But I think Leatherface might just have like that little bit of the edge of being just stronger in general. Yeah.
Okay.
I also don't think Ash is that smart. So I don't know if he's really going to be able to outsmart Leatherface or not.
The Winchesters versus the Salvatores.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we did this. We actually did this debate.
No! Sam and Dean are dumb.
So she's giving it to the Salvatore brothers.
Giving it to the Salvatore brothers. Sam and Dean are stupid all the time.
David and Stefan?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Alice versus Celine. Alice from Resident Evil versus Celine from Underworld.
Oh, no. This is unfair, but I'm going to say Alice, and the reason I'm going to say Alice is because her husband's the director.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah, so here's the thing with Alice, right? Alice is designed specifically to be like almost a Mary Sue. Like she's always got whatever she needs all the time. Celine is a little bit better written in that she doesn't always have what she needs. She needs to get what she needs from other people. So whereas Alice is always going to have the edge of being like always having whatever it is that in her arsenal, she's always going to be able to whip something out. Celine is stuck playing politics.
Okay. Buffy versus Blade.
Buffy from the TV show, or Buffy like the overall comic series, or
overall Buffy the Vampire Slayer versus Blade the Dompier from Marvel.
Yeah, I would give it to Buffy. She's got a better I think she's just got a better arsenal overall. Like for overall information and overall like way of handling things, whereas Blade is kind of like Unga bunga. Move forward.
Okay. Critters versus Gremlins.
Ooh, Gremlins.
Okay. Tall Man versus Slender Man.
Slender.
Slender Man over the Tall Man from Phantasm.
Yeah, I'm giving it to Slender.
Slender Man. Okay.
I'm giving it to Slendy. Love me some Slendy.
The Banana Splits versus Willy's Wonderland. Oh, look at those gears turn.
Bananas.
The Banana Splits?
Yeah, Banana Splits.
Okay. It versus Bagul from Sinister.
Which It?
Essentially it, the cosmic entity.
The cosmic entity. Okay, so we're not specifying.
And then Bagul, who is essentially the god of that dimension.
I mean, I feel like the god. I feel like the god. Wait, he's a god.
Well, he's a god. I think it's a.
Well, what does it really do?
The clown Pennywise is an avatar of that in our reality. But, but it itself is kind of a function of the universe as a cosmic entity. But the other one is a god.
Yeah, you're stuck in a situation of like inevitability, two different kinds of inevitability. Whereas like are you ever really going to be able to get rid of it, the cosmic? No, but is it ever really going to go beyond what the line that is drawn by this god is?
Okay. Dr. Giggles versus the dentist.
What the fuck? Dentists are terrible people.
The dentist. And he got 2 movies.
The dentist wins just for being a complete psychopath.
Okay, coming in on the end of it, Cujo versus Max 3000 from Man's Best Friend.
Oh no. Cujo.
Move
it to Cujo. Yeah.
Chuds, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, versus humanoids from the deep.
Chuds take it.
Chuds
take it.
Candyman versus Bloody Mary.
Oh no. Probably the Candyman. That'd be close. I think the Candyman.
Fireflies versus Sawyers.
Fireflies.
Warlock, Julian Sands, the Warlock, versus Nyx from Lord of Illusions.
I don't know Nyx. I don't know Nyx well enough.
Clyde Barker story. Okay.
I don't know that one well enough to say.
The Killer Tomatoes versus Killer Clowns from outer space.
Fucking clowns! Which would I rather deal with? Clowns are worse.
Jack Frost, the mutated killer snowman versus Krampus.
Jack Frost. Krampus is overhyped. He's not really He's not really that good.
Intriguing. I actually debated that myself and actually lost because they sided with Krampus over Jack Frost. But I thought Jack Frost had it. But I'm glad to hear somebody sided with me.
Jack Frost has way more like utilitable abilities than Krampus actually has. So ultimately in a fight, unless Krampus can just take a beating forever, which he cannot, Jack Frost is going to win that.
Thank you. Wrong Turn versus The Hills Have Eyes.
Hills Have Eyes.
I
like the group. I like the group dynamic.
Mick Taylor versus The Hitcher. Mick Taylor from Wolf Creek.
Yeah.
Taylor?
Yeah.
I think interesting because they gave that one to when we debated that they gave it to The Hitcher.
What? Yeah. Why did they give it to The Hitcher?
I think it was because Mick is too reliant on stuff, like he's too much of a survivalist, whereas the Hitcher is more adept at kind of using whatever he finds available.
On the fly? Okay.
Yeah, on the fly stuff, yeah.
All right. It's like the Batman versus Spider-Man. Batman wins if you give him any kind of time period, but Spider-Man is more adaptable.
Pinhead versus Pazuzu.
Why are these two put against each other? Pazuzu.
Pazuzu? Yeah, agreed.
Pazuzu.
Victor Crowley versus the Rougarou. I don't know if you might know that Victor Crowley from the Hatchet films versus the Cajun werewolf legend, the Rougarou.
Just the legend in general?
But they're both kind of like legendary creatures.
Yeah.
Both bound to the swamps.
Yeah, I feel like our werewolf boy wins.
Rougarou?
Yeah, werewolves tend to get the edge on I just have an axe.
Ghoulies versus hobgoblins.
Oh. Ghoulies.
Okay. Rubber, about the killer sentient tire, versus Birdemic.
Is there only one tire?
Yeah, it's just one rubber.
Is one rubber versus all the birds?
But he can psychically blow up birds.
Yeah, but how many can he blow up at a time?
See, we never actually got that answer to that question, but we did see that his powers were increasing over time. So,
okay, so we're gonna assume at the end of the movie. So let's say he's got like at least a month worth of like psychic practice of his tire explodey brain power. Birds are dumb. I'm gonna go with the tire.
We're going Robert the tire.
Going with the tire. Why would the birds are attacking people, right? So why would they suddenly switch directions onto a tire?
Excellent point.
They're not interested in eating it. It's not gonna provide them any sustenance. They probably don't even realize that the tire's what's exploding them. Tire wins.
Give it to Robert. Mission. And the last one, Annie Wilkes versus Norman Bates.
Wilkes.
Oh, Annie. Okay. All right. So those are the current Bloodbath debates that we've done on our show, where we totally nerd out and we debate who would win in a fight to the death. The next one coming up is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer versus Patrick Bateman from American Psycho.
Okay.
So we're gonna debate those two on the next Bloodbath debate. But that's something cool that we do over the show is we examine it, and of course that's when the nerd rage flies.
You are absolutely gonna have to let me know when you start pulling like some of the sci-fi into it, because like you got to do a HAL right at some point.
Oh, a HAL 9000.
Yeah. Gotta get like a little bit of killer AI. So you gotta do like HAL versus Victoria from iRobot.
Ooh.
Right?
So
you see what I'm getting at? Yeah, you got a little bit of like fucking like goofy ass killer machines in there.
Ooh, Firestarter versus Carrie. Ooh, that's a possibility.
That is a good
Interesting. So like I said, this is it's a wonderful genre. It's the one that we love so much. It's pretty much where my career as a writer has taken me, not only from cosmic horror, from writing cosmic horror fiction, to the screenplays that I've written. Because it states because I'm a filmmaker as well. We're currently we're developing the remake to a particularly awesome slasher film, and the little horror shorts that I've written, and so it's all about just enjoying this thing and really appreciating this genre that, while there are many, many subgenres beneath it, and no matter how you enjoy it, of all the different forms of media that you enjoy, it's all connected in that respect. And it's something that will always be there. Every single other genre that exists will always pull from, or will always be connected to horror in some way, because you can always flip something on its head, and it can always be put in that hyperbolic, that terrifyingly hyperbolic sense that anyone can relate to. Someone out there can relate to it in some way. Doesn't matter what you're showing, whether it's super ultra gore, splatter, Herschel Gordon Lewis, fucking, or you want to go artsy, like supernatural stuff like Dario Argento. It doesn't matter if you want to go like J horror, K horror, I horror, Filipino horror. It doesn't matter. Everything touched on it. It's all rooted in our past. It's all rooted in the stories that we used to tell ourselves and the legends. And it's all about telling each other stories so that we can overcome the things that make us afraid, and about the things that we can't control in the world. And it brings us together. And that's the beauty of this genre, as terrifying as it might be. And, sometimes this is where horror is for you. But either way, it unites us. The whole
There's something
thing.
to be
Up
said.
Next to somebody you love.
Yeah, there's something that's definitely interesting about like that aspect of it, and I've noticed that a lot of the horror games that are coming out have a lot of co-op aspects. So like Among Us is a co-op game, Phantasmophobia is a co-op game. There's like the one that takes place in the hedge maze. That's a co-op game, and they all started using proximity voice. Right, there's a couple that are like Hunt Bigfoot,
Dead by Daylight.
Dead by Daylight, yep, right? You've got all these, and they started adding this co-op element, which means like there's a degree of almost uncalculable variability because you now are dealing with also other humans. And because you're dealing with other humans, you don't know how they're going to respond in a stressful situation until you've actually played it with them a handful of times. And even then, sometimes something gets you that you're not used to. And like, I've even seen horror utilized in League of Legends. There's a character named Fiddlesticks. There's a character named Warwick, and both of them got cinematic trailers when they got their reworks. And those cinematic trailers rely so heavily on horror elements because one of them's like a werewolf in London and the other one is Jeepers Creepers. And I shit you not, playing this top-down game, I have been spooked by one of those guys coming out of left field and I didn't know he was there and he flies out of nowhere and kills me. Surprise! So like, side question, do you think that anybody who's looking into getting into writing, anybody who's looking to getting into filmmaking or script writing, do you think that horror is a good tool to practice? Because it kind of uses elements from all sorts of genres, or like any genre can use horror elements, so it's very malleable that way. And although it might not be easy, to elicit fear or discomfort or concern is a very like obvious thing. Like comedy's a little bit harder. Same kind of thing.
Right.
You can find comedy in anything, so it's got a very broad angle you can take so that you can properly sort of portray it. Whereas horror is like, it's such a, as vague as it is, that's where it plays, right? Like it's vague, but you want to utilize that to elicit certain emotions. And as a writer, being able to practice that, I don't know, what do you think?
So as a writer, first and foremost, I'll be the first to tell anybody, writing is difficult. It's a thing that you progress at, and you will progress it all your life. And there'll be times when you think that you're improving, times that you think that you've stagnated, but it doesn't matter. The whole point of being a writer is that you just keep writing. And I think the best advice that I would give to anybody who's getting into it is like, yes, could you tap into the horror genre? Absolutely. Horror is one of the easiest things, is when it comes down to it, is what I found to be one of the easiest things to write. The most difficult thing to write is romance. And I found that comedy lies somewhere in between. Right. Comedy is all in the timing. But what people can, love is so incredibly subjective because it's tied into individual experiences, individuals' interpretations of experiences. So conveying a romantic moment doesn't play as well. It doesn't play as broadly as some people would think, which is why when you see romantic movies that are considered like these big time romantic movies, there's either multiple love stories in it and people will identify with certain couples, or it's one particular story that has all the kind of tropes of a romance, but there's usually a narrative that it's running a parallel to, like in Ghost.
Right.
Ghost is
it's
one of the most romantic movies ever.
Overarching issue versus like the romance.
There's like a big underlying story, and then love is kind of like running parallel to that. So, but horror has one of the easiest entries in it because fear is ubiquitous to everybody. Everybody is afraid of something, whether it's death or it's loss or it's or you can type or the dark. I mean, you literally go online and find a list of 1,000 phobias. And every single one of those has a story that goes. Pick one that has a story that goes behind it. If you want to get into writing, start practicing and honing your style. You can jump into any genre. Horror is one of the easiest because it's the easiest thing you could pick a subject from and just start writing a story on it. But the key point, the key strategy is start small. Write small stories. Understand the basic structure of a story, which is in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. You have your beginning, you have your setup, and then you have your climax. Start writing small stories, then write larger stories. I've been writing for well over probably almost 30 years now. And it wasn't until I was in my late 30s. Actually, no, I left when I was 38. Yeah. It wasn't until I was 39 years old that I finally wrote my first novella, when I felt strong enough to actually write something that says it's not even a full novel. And so it takes time. You eventually get there. And in that amount of time, I've written stage plays, I've written screenplays, I've done adaptations. You just keep practicing until you find your style. And the most important thing, no matter what genre you go, especially if you're going to choose a genre to get into, is read. Keep reading. Read everything. Everything you could possibly get your hands on in that genre, just read it. Read it over and over again. Read different versions of it. Read adaptations of it. The more you read, the more you'll get in touch with what your source is. And the more you're in touch with your source is, the more you will come out in that. So that you won't be like aping someone else's style. You'll find your own style in all those little stories that you tell. Because where I started was those old notebooks with the black and white spattered covers, that we had back in the late 80s. That's where I started writing little short stories that probably are the reason why I was in certain behavioral classes I was in, because I loved horror and I wrote scary stories. So my mother would see them and be like, "My child is fucked up. My child is fucked up.
Hello there, tiny Satan."
This is in your imagination. It's like they just go, and you just keep practicing. Practice, read, find your style, and it will eventually grow, but you have to feed it. Like anything, it takes time, practice, and effort. If you love writing, it's not something you can just like sure, you can dive into it, but it's not something you're going to be like, I'm a fucking writer. Even Stephen King will tell you from the very beginning, when he first started, his shit was trash. And he was rejected, and he was rejected, and he was rejected until finally he wrote Carrie.
Right.
And the rest, they say, is history. So, it takes time, if you look at it like this, I look at it like this, and I think you can appreciate this. Anybody can appreciate this. Look at Kate Bush. Okay? Kate Bush wrote Running Up That Hill in I think it was 1984, 85.
In there.
So Kate Bush wrote that song in the 80s. All right? Didn't really, wasn't a big hitter. It was covered a couple times. I thought some of the covers that were done by it, I thought there was I can't remember, what the hell is the name of that group that covered it? But anyway, so, Running Up That Hill wasn't a big hit when it came out. And then a couple of people covered it because it was interesting, but it never really was like a big charter. Then all of a sudden, Stranger Things comes along, utilizes it for the sequence with Max, and Kate Bush, from 1980 to 2021, Kate Bush is suddenly topping the charts.
Yeah.
You never know how it's going to swing.
Yeah.
So, keep writing, keep doing it. Don't ever stop, because if you're a writer, that's what you should be doing.
I think that there's something to be said for people get really attached to their babies. Like, they have their one story that they want to tell. Right. And so you get so attached to your baby, and you just worry. That's the thing that's always in the back of your mind. It's always that thing you're working on, and that's the one you want. Listen, you never want your baby published. It's your baby. As soon as, if you publish it, then everyone's going to start fucking with it all the way down the line. So what you want to make a bunch of other stuff, and you can use elements from your baby and use the elements that you learn writing other stuff to make your baby better, but it's your baby.
It's always the thing you keep coming back to. I think King said that about the Dark Tower trilogy, is of the Dark Tower franchise, that he wrote the first one, and then all of a sudden it was the drawing of the 3, and then then you get to Wizard and Glass, and it's like, wow. Yeah. Now you have bridged. You've literally created a hub where all of all the little of the stories you tell are now kind of linked, because it's like, this is getting really, really huge. Then it took forever for Wolves of the Kala to come out, and then Song of Susanna, and then so on. So it was like, what happened at that time? And he was like, in his own words, he was like, it's gotten so large.
Yep.
And this was kind of like this was my magnum opus. He never called it himself, but he knew what it was.
Yep.
That is his Lord of the Rings.
His baby.
And so, And so he wanted to protect it. Because he gives, do you add to it? Do you keep progressing it? Where does it end? What do you do? What if I screw it up?
Do you give it to other people and then start letting them fuck with it?
Right. Do you sign over the rights and have them make a Matthew McConaughey film with it?
The new King of Horror, Matthew McConaughey.
I'm sorry, I love Matthew McConaughey. I love Matthew McConaughey, and I love me some Idris Elba. Bad. But I digress on that one. But yeah, everyone's got their. I think I actually think I have a story myself. It was a screenplay that I wrote. That was one of my earliest screenplays about this. It's kind of film noir, cosmic horror, Lovecraftian thing about this disgraced cop chasing this bad guy to this town that time forgot, and there's like this ultimate evil in the town, and it's like the nothing is black and white. There's gray areas and everything, and what is morality and shit. And I wrote this so long ago and tried to get it produced, and it never went anywhere. So I've got this screenplay like sitting in a box somewhere.
It's like an old binder, like on
it's like this hour and a half screenplay that's just fucking sitting there collecting dust. I can't think of anything to add to it. I don't know if it'll ever get produced. It probably never will, sitting in a box somewhere, unless I suddenly get famous. And I'll be like, hey, check this out and read it. But
no, then you sign each page of it, and you sell each page individually. So then some collector somewhere gets all of them together to get the full screenplay. Now it's it's a whole meta.
It's and that because it was like I think in that film. Well, I keep looking over here like it's in my closet. I think it might be, but
Jason's standing on top of it.
But I think that was the earliest legit screenplay I ever wrote. It was like my first try to write a movie, and I spent about a year on it to really hone it down. And then no one really had any interest. I think because they thought it may have been too expensive. But people really was like, oh, it's intriguing, and I was like, but I kind of took it as like maybe I'm not ready, so I shelved it and I put it away. But I don't know if I'll let anybody touch it because that was my first foray. That was my first idea of me putting my ideas on paper. So it's very, very special to me. And I don't know if I'll ever make it, but maybe one day. But I know that, sometimes you got to take risks and you got to put yourself out there, but you just got to keep doing it. You just got to keep putting yourself forward. Absolutely.
I got to
just be very careful. Just be very careful.
Yeah.
Cautionary tale. And I shit you not. And it hurts me to tell this.
Oh.
I wrote a movie for a friend. I wrote a script, or as a spec script for a friend, about a young black woman who is recently paralyzed in an accident, loses her parents, and inherits their plantation home in southern Louisiana, in like South Louisiana.
Of course it's Louisiana, yes.
Right. And then so she's at the house, but she's in a wheelchair. She's wheelchair bound. And then she's in the house and she's contemplating whether or not to,
unalive.
The trauma. And then all of a sudden a hurricane comes in. She gets left behind and gets stuck because she can't get evacuated because people can't get to her. And then all of a sudden she's trapped in the house with a 15-foot alligator. And it's fight for survival. Do you want to live or do you want to go?
Paralyzed black woman considering suicide fighting an alligator? Hell yeah!
So I wrote this script.
This has C-film on Netflix written all over it.
So I wrote this spec script, and I'm throwing it out there because, and the reason I'm throwing it out there, people will say, don't share your ideas like this. I'm throwing this out there because it was one of the first scripts I actually tried to shop, like legitimately tried to shop around.
Yeah.
And I started putting it around. I let people read it, and it was like, and people was like, no, it's too expensive. Doing a big house with water, it's like a multi-million-dollar production, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff. So kept getting all these no's. I was like, you know what, screw it. Bunch of people read it. Everybody said no. I put it away. I got it sitting somewhere. And 2 years later, I get a call, or actually it was a text. I get a text from a dude I'd worked with on like a website years ago when I was writing content for him. And so I get a text from him, like, hey dude, did you hear the news? And it was like this great dude I know named Gabriel. And he's a horror director as well. And he was like, hey, man, did you hear the news? I was like, no. It's like, this is like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, what news? He's like, dude, check this link out. This link, it was the fucking link for Crawl. Girl trapped in a house during a hurricane in Florida with not one alligator, but many alligators.
Oh, right. Yeah, we need more alligators, less Louisiana.
And it's not,
got it.
It's not her that's disabled. It's her father that's disabled because her father is injured. So I was like, are you shitting me? Because he was one of the ones that read the script. And it was like, dude, did you sell the script or something? I was like, no. And so I started trying to put the dots together. The film was produced by 2 guys, written and directed by a couple of brothers up in Pennsylvania. And I was sitting there thinking, could my idea have made it from Texas all the way up to Pennsylvania just by word of mouth or people talking about it? And then these guys happen to have the right connections in order to make this happen?
Yeah.
Don't put your ideas out there. Not to an extreme extent. I'm just saying, because protect what you have. Because what you have, you never know. If you put it out there and nobody bites,
where it's gonna go.
2 years later, you may hear that your fucking movie got made. That's so lit.
That's so.
And then I watched the movie and I was like, God damn it, this actually isn't too bad.
They didn't screw it up. I have my baby is a. I have like 3 active ones that I've been working on for a really, really long time. And one of them is a D&D like full campaign, like level 1 to level 20. Like it is all the way across. And the concepts that it deals with are open-ended enough. And because it's not, I don't mind sharing, because it's gonna totally depend on character choice. And so it's got that open-ended, so I can kind of share details about it and be like, I don't know how your player's gonna deal with it. Right? And it deals a whole lot with like...
So it's like a story. It's like a story you're writing or a book you're writing based upon the campaign that you're running.
No, so I haven't ran the campaign. It is a campaign.
Oh,
so like it is
okay.
Right. So it's like something like King's Thunder or Horde of the Dragon Queen, where you like take the book and you run the book for your friends, and it's got all the information in the book about what if they choose this, then this. If they do this, then this. Right? So one of the main like plot twists is the story is designed for archetypal characters. So it's got character sheets that are designed for the game. It's like, listen, you can make your character however you want and like let them be whoever they want, but you're the archer or you're the wizard or you're the fighter. And then you get to be like, no, you start your heroes. Your heroes are going to go save the day. Oh, the world is a lot bigger than we realized. And like that's kind of the overarching, and maybe things aren't exactly what they seem with this encroachment of the Far Realm, and the Far Realm is the whole Lovecraftian horror of like this exists and it's going to come and eat you and destroy everything and consume everything. What are you going to do about it? And the players don't even get to know that the Far Realm is even a thing until like level 12.
Nice.
So it's like a whole lot of fun with that and starting to play with like alignments because, you know, people who come to a D&D table, especially people who've been playing for a while, have their expectations, right? There's like, metallic dragons are good guys. Chaotic dragons are bad guys. Oh, liches are evil. Oh, these guys, Bahamut's great. Or, oh, Paylor's amazing. And so you get to come. I have one thing set up, and the players are all built out of the player's handbook.
Okay.
Now, 5th edition's been around for a while, so the player's handbook is clearly not the only character choices. But the only things you'll find in the area that they begin in are all directly out of the player. There's nothing from anywhere else. And then they get to meet a handful of NPCs, and those NPCs are coming from across the sea. And they have things from, like, Xanathars and things from Mordekainens and things from... And it's just like, oh, shit. What's happening?
That's sweet.
Yeah, so it deals with that whole crawl of... The world gets bigger, so you need to get stronger to deal with it.
Very good. Palladium does something similar with its there's a book that you can do where you can essentially adapt anything you want to the Palladium system, and that's what I was doing. And so I was running a mercenary campaign, and because Rifts is all about, there are rifts of the world, you go to other places like this. So I wound up doing adapting Jason Voorhees to that system. I wound up adapting Captain Jack.
Hell yeah.
Jack Sparrow to it. So just different cool little stuff. So, like coming up with attributes for Jack, like he's got a magical compass and
actually,
he's got this magical hat. And so
great question. Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one. Where does that fall in the level of horror? Because it's got skeletons, it's got curses, it's got deep sea nonsense, it's got like existential craziness.
So I would put and I would say moral quandaries as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Given the Jack and Elizabeth, and even Jack, Elizabeth, and Will, and even Barbossa have to deal with, and Norrington especially.
Yeah.
So given, I would say I still kind of put that in the family horror
it's
genre.
It's definitely an action adventure.
It's definitely that.
Supposed to be.
I would say anybody familiar with the ride would get kind of would say, oh, this is kind of like the movie version of the ride itself. Whereas it's for the kids can enjoy it. And it's got chills and scares, but nothing too extreme. But it's got the stuff for adults that are old enough to pick up on it, but kids don't pick up on it. The adults are like, I got that reference.
Or even like, wait, what are the consequences of this? Like, wait a minute. Because what if you've got an art, like you have potentially, if you have that Aztec chest and you take that chest and you're a government official and then you give your soldiers one token, you now have an unkillable army.
Right?
Like what happens as soon as you start expounding on the possibilities of what you could do with that kind of access?
So I like that it plays for both, and I still kind of chalk it up. I think I put it in the family horror. It's adventure. It's action adventure with the family horror trope, but it doesn't dive too hard in it. But I think the adults pick up on these little things, but it's like somebody in the chat mentioned before. It's done in a way that we can easily internalize it, and kind of it's in a safe environment where we can kind of go, that's an interesting thought posed by this children's film with CGI skeletons and. Johnny Depp acting like Reed, or acting like fucking Richards on so like this, which is just hands. Brilliant. Yeah, just I mean that's inspired, and you say, oh wow, even in this goofiness, we can look and see deeper things. So
I like how the idea that like as you learned more about what had happened to Jack, even in just the first movie, because at first he's like, oh, he's just like a drunk, he's just stumbling around, and it's like, no, he's been on the ocean, so he's got sea legs, so he's stumbling, and he's clearly suffering from severe heat stroke. Being on
heat
that
stroke
island.
At one point, and likely drunk. Likely has prolonged sunstroke, or suffered heat stroke at one point, and he's used to being on the ocean so much. I love, and I did, but adults will pick up on the little stuff, like the stuff going on in Tortuga and all the little things there, and it's like, and the idea is like the kids will be like, they could just imagine Jack Sparrow, on the beach, raft, lashed a couple of sea turtles and made himself a raft. What did he use for rope? Human hair. From on back. And so the kids think it's hilarious like that, but then we get the sense of it. But adults are reminded that sometimes the legends that we know are usually promulgated by the people who they are, promulgated by the people they're about. They're essentially, they're blown up out of perspective, when in actuality, I was on the beach for 3 days. And
I got picked up.
The smugglers picked me up and I was able to barter passage off. It's literally that simple. And then you just kind of let things run. So it ties it into reality for the adults and lets the kids have something fun to kind of play with their imaginations.
Yeah.
No different, that's the beauty of, I think, being a kid, is having that, is being able to do that. And eventually some point, you kind of come into reality.
And we've rolled right back to just how great the Halloween season is for the whole month in general, because there's nothing like seeing everybody's decorations up as you get closer and closer to Halloween, getting your costume prepared for when you go to school that day, and you're walking home from school, the sun's starting to get a little lower because it's getting a little bit of that time of the year, and you're walking by a house that has skeletons and sheet ghosts and spider webs all over the place, and it's just like the whole shebang.
It's, that's the beauty of it. One of my from a youngest age, and I know I've got some years on you, but one of my favorite
I'm
moments.
only 17.
One of my favorite scenes. Remember, because if you like remember back to E.T.
Yeah,
there was there was the trick-or-treating scene, the Halloween scene with E.T. And it's all the kids running around the neighborhood, everybody in their costumes doing their thing. Phone home, phone. That shit was hilarious.
To Yoda,
to the Yoda, that was just, Spielberg is just brilliant. But Spielberg and Lucas were great back in the day. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, that's what it was always about. Is there is a level of innocence, there is a level of unity. It hasn't been overly commercialized. We do it for the pure and utter joy of it. Some people do it because they still practice, they recognize the rituals, and they still hold them to a specific, personal importance. But all in all, it's about the community. That's what it's about. This was a celebration of the harvest season, of all of us coming together to enjoy the fruits of our labor. We're bringing in the harvest. Everybody, this is where we're going to feast through the winter, where all the work of the spring and all the work through the summer and all the toiling has now come in. Now the snows are coming, things are going to ice over. We've got all the food here. We're happy and safe for the fall. We're going to give thanks, celebrate the harvest, and then do it all again next year. And that's what this is about. It's about bringing the community together. That's why the joy of seeing kids running around in their costumes, the joy of people. There's no competition when people do Halloween, when people decorate their houses. No one's sitting there like, it's not like Christmas lights. Where I'm like, I could do better than that and be bigger on Christmas. Fuck that. Decorate however you want. Go to Spirit Halloween and get some shit. Make it yourself. I got a person across the street from me who all they do is they just put up Halloween stickers all over the front door. That works. You celebrate. You can celebrate it in your own way. You can carve pumpkins. You don't have to. You can do whatever you like. It's all about joy and innocence and enjoying the time together in the spirit of the harvest. And that's why that's why October is the best month of the year. The spooky season is the best.
And that's where we'll end it. Thanks everybody for coming. This has been JL Warren. This has been fantastic. Go find his links down below. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for enjoying the spooky season with us. And hopefully we'll see you next time. And I look forward to potentially having you back as soon as possible, because this is fantastic.
It's so much fun. Absolutely. And if you ever want to, we could do some like ghost video debunking, or is it real? Is it not? Yes. I love doing that stuff. I did that with conspiracy cats. Oh. We had an absolute blast. So
shit. I got a handful of those, so we can definitely do that at some point. Shill what you want to shill, and let's get on out of here.
All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Chesh, so much. This has been an absolute blast. It's just so much fun. I love the spooky season. I hope you love it as much as I do. I'm JL. You can go and check me out at Bridge the Divide, which is youtube.com/JL Warren. You can check me out at Week in Horror, youtube.com/Week in Horror, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can check us out there. You can support those products there, or, whatever. Go out there and enjoy the spooky season. If you want to be a writer, go be a writer. Be creative. Do your thing. And, of course, as always, be safe and be excellent to each other. And I'll see you next time. Oh, and vote for me for Face of Horror.